Why is it that the strongest women are often the ones who cry alone in silence? Not the kind of crying anyone ever sees, but the quiet ache behind closed doors. The kind of pain that doesn't scream, it simmers. You wouldn't know it just by looking at her. She shows up, she smiles, she carries, she leads, she holds the room together. But when it gets quiet, when the world stops needing her for a moment, that's when she feels it. The tiredness in her bones, the invisible weight on her chest, the deep, unspoken feeling that something inside her is cracked, and maybe it's been cracked for a very long time. She's the one everyone leans on. Yet when she reaches out, it often feels like no one sees her. No one truly knows what it took for her to be this strong. They think she was born this way. But strength like hers, it's not inherited, it's built from pain. That kind of strength doesn't grow in sunlight. It grows in the dark, in silence, in loneliness, in the moments she learned not to ask for anything, because asking always led to disappointment. So she became what the world needed, and slowly forgot what she needed. If you've ever felt this, that quiet heartbreak of being everything to everyone, and yet feeling invisible at your core, this video is for you. This is not about advice. This isn't a motivational speech. This is a mirror, a soft whisper that says, I see you, because today we're diving into something deeply personal, the hidden grief behind strong women, the quiet battles no one ever talks about, and why, according to the deepest parts of Carl Jung's work and the deepest truths of the human soul, this wound might be the very key to becoming whole again. So take a deep breath, and if something in you already knows this story is yours, stay with me. You're not broken. You were just never allowed to be soft. If this reaches you, and something inside feels understood, subscribe to the channel. Like this video, not because you have to, but because you want to be part of a space where strength and softness are allowed to exist in the same breath. Let's begin. She learned to be strong when no one showed up. There wasn't a grand moment, no dramatic event, just a slow accumulation of silence, promises not kept, needs that went unmet, words she swallowed to keep the peace. And so, strength wasn't something she chose, it was something she had to become. Maybe her childhood felt like walking on glass. Maybe she had to parent her parents. Or maybe she simply grew up in a home where emotions were seen as weakness, and needing too much was met with coldness. And so, little by little, she stopped asking, stopped crying, stopped needing. She built walls. She clung to achievement. She became the good one, the capable one, the one who could handle everything. Praise felt like love. Perfection felt like safety. Control felt like oxygen. But beneath it all, behind the confidence, the independence, the fierce determination, lives a girl who was never truly allowed to fall apart. She holds herself together with invisible thread, always smiling, always composed. But if you look close enough, her eyes tell a different story. There's something ancient there, like a tired soul wearing a beautiful mask. And the world doesn't make it easier, does it? Because when you're strong, people forget you have limits. They assume you're fine. They come to you when they're broken, but rarely ask how you're holding up. You become a container for everyone else's pain, until your own pain becomes so buried, even you start to forget it's there. But it doesn't go away. It waits, quietly, and sometimes it leaks through the cracks in ways you can't explain. A sudden exhaustion, a numbness in the middle of something joyful, a quiet rage you can't put into words, a sadness that shows up in your body, in your back, your chest, your stomach. You wonder why you feel broken, even when everything looks fine. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And for many strong women, that pain is the realization that their strength was built on suppression, the suppression of softness, of vulnerability, of being held. You weren't allowed to fall apart, so now you don't know how to let go. You weren't allowed to be angry, so now you internalize it until your stomach turns into knots. You weren't allowed to say, "This hurts," so now you say, "I'm fine," until it becomes your identity. And the worst part? You've done such a good job hiding it that even you forget there's more underneath. But the body remembers. The body keeps score of every time you were told to get over it, every moment you had to smile when you were crumbling inside, every time your softness was used against you, every time love came with conditions, every time you gave too much and still felt like it wasn't enough. You start to confuse love with self-erasure. You start to believe that to be chosen, you must be easy, low maintenance, strong, sexy, sweet but never too much. So you edit yourself, in relationships, at work, even with friends. You become so good at molding into what others need that eventually you forget who you really are, until one day the exhaustion becomes unbearable and you ask the question you've been avoiding: what would happen if I stopped being strong? Not forever, not completely, just for a moment. What would happen if you let someone hold you not because you were falling apart, but because you deserve to be held? What would happen if you let yourself be soft, not because you're weak, but because you're tired of performing strength? What if the brokenness you feel isn't a flaw, but a signal that your soul is asking for something deeper, not more perfection, not more control, but more truth, more rest, more honesty? What if being strong is no longer about carrying everything, but about learning how to set it down? The real strength is not in pretending to be okay. The real strength is in facing the parts of yourself you've spent your whole life hiding. Because the moment you stop trying to be the woman the world demands, you start becoming the woman your soul remembers. And she, the woman underneath the mask, she's not broken. She's just waiting for you to come home to her. But coming home to her is not easy. She doesn't speak in logic or productivity. She won't be quiet just because you're busy. She doesn't respond to checklists or to-do lists. She speaks in feelings, in longing, in the sudden tears that come out of nowhere when you hear a certain song, in the lump in your throat when someone hugs you just a little longer than usual, in the deep loneliness you feel even when you're surrounded by people, and maybe you've been running from her for years, because letting her speak means letting the pain surface. Letting her speak means remembering what it felt like to be that little girl who just wanted to be held and told, "You don't have to earn love." Letting her speak means breaking the armor. And that armor, it's not just for the world, it's for you too. It protects you from disappointment, from being let down again, from hoping too much, from needing too deeply. Because when you've needed before, people left. So you told yourself, don't need, don't ask, just handle it. But what if that decision, that quiet inner decision you made as a child or a teen or a young woman, is the very thing that's kept you feeling so alone? What if your strength, while admirable, has also become your prison? What if the "I got this" is now your silent cry for help? You don't have to live that way. You're allowed to be both, strong and scared, capable and confused, independent and deeply longing to be held. You're allowed to not know. You're allowed to say, "I'm not okay," even if you've always been the one people rely on. And yes, it might feel terrifying at first, like you're unraveling, like something inside you is collapsing. But maybe it's not a collapse. Maybe it's a return. Because here's the truth they never told you. You were never meant to carry it all. You were never meant to hold every burden in silence. You were never meant to be so self-sufficient that no one ever thinks to ask you how your heart is doing. You were meant to feel, to cry, to break down and be held, to laugh so hard you forget the ache, to be seen not just for your strength, but for your tenderness. You were meant to be human, and somewhere along the way, someone made you feel like being human was too much. So you learned to shrink it, to dim it, to carry it in quiet. But you're not here to be small. You're here to be whole, not polished, not perfect, whole. And wholeness includes the part of you that still aches, the part of you that still hopes, the part of you that wants to be loved without having to earn it. Wholeness is messy, it's honest, it's soft, and you might be scared of softness because every time you softened before, someone took advantage. But that doesn't mean softness is wrong. It just means you were soft in unsafe places. This time, you get to choose differently. This time, you don't have to be strong out of survival. You get to be strong from truth. You get to say, I need, and not feel ashamed. You get to say, I don't want to do this alone anymore, and not feel weak. You get to be held not because you've earned it, not because you've fallen apart, but because you're worthy. Just as you are. No mask, no performance. You, the woman who has carried so much for so long, the woman who is finally ready to set it down. There's a moment quiet, nearly invisible, when a woman realizes she's been waiting, not for a person, not for love in the traditional sense, but for herself, and that moment changes everything. It doesn't come in some grand awakening. It doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like a whisper, a pause, a deep exhale she didn't know she'd been holding. She might be brushing her hair in the mirror, or walking alone at dusk, or lying awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, and something inside her will say enough, not as a collapse, but as a reclaiming. Enough pretending, enough perfection, enough apologizing for being too much, or not enough, or both at the same time. That's the day the strong woman stops asking the world to validate her worth and begins the long, sacred process of learning to validate herself. That's when healing begins. But healing isn't always pretty. It's not yoga poses and herbal tea and curated quotes on Instagram. Sometimes healing looks like crying in your car on the way to work. Sometimes it looks like setting boundaries that make you feel guilty for days. Sometimes it looks like letting go of people you thought you'd have forever simply because you've outgrown the version of yourself who tolerated their love. Sometimes it looks like not knowing who you are without the chaos, without the caretaking, without the roles that gave you identity. That's where grief comes in. And no one talks about that part, the grief. The grief of realizing how much of your life was built around survival. The grief of mourning the girl you had to become just to be safe. The grief of not knowing what your life could have been if someone had loved you the way you needed when you were young. It's real, and it hurts, and it deserves to be felt, because once that grief moves through you, it carves out space. Space for peace, for softness, for stillness. Space for the version of you who doesn't have to perform anymore. And that version of you, she's not fragile. She's radiant, because there's nothing more powerful than a woman who has faced her own shadow and chosen to love herself anyway. There's nothing more magnetic than a woman who no longer betrays herself just to be chosen. She's no longer addicted to being needed, no longer fueled by external praise, no longer scared of being misunderstood, because she understands herself. And that self, the real self, is no longer hidden behind strength. She lets people see her now, really see her, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means being too much for some, even if it means walking alone for a while, because solitude is no longer a punishment, it's a sanctuary, and in that sanctuary, she begins to rebuild. Not the old self, the woman who endured, who survived, who kept everything together. But the true self, the woman who knows her worth, doesn't depend on what she produces, who she pleases, or how well she performs strength. The woman who no longer proves anything to anyone. The woman who finally knows she is enough, not because someone told her, not because she earned it, but because she remembered. Remembered what? That softness is power, that presence is strength, that tears are sacred, that resting is holy, that being loved starts with being known, and being known starts with being honest. And honesty is messy, but it's where wholeness begins. Not when you fix yourself, but when you stop trying to be someone you're not. You are not broken. You are becoming. And that process, though raw and painful, is the bravest thing you'll ever do. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when you stop hiding your hurt. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that shouts, "I'm healing," into the world. But the quiet kind, where you finally allow yourself to feel what you've spent a lifetime avoiding. You cry, not because you're weak, but because you've finally created a space where crying is safe. You stop pretending, not because you've given up, but because pretending is too heavy to carry anymore. You let people go, not because you don't love them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop shrinking to fit their comfort. And maybe this is the first time in your life you've actually told the truth. Maybe you've said it out loud, "I'm tired of being the strong one." Not because you want someone to rescue you, but because you want to rescue yourself from the version of you who never got to fall apart. That version of you, she's been trying so hard, and she did so well, but she's exhausted, and she deserves rest, not just sleep. Soul rest, nervous system rest. The kind of rest that doesn't come from a vacation, it comes from knowing that you are no longer pretending to be okay. That's when the real healing begins. Because the strong woman's deepest wound isn't just that no one showed up for her. It's that she stopped showing up for herself. She started measuring her value through her output. She started defining her worth by how useful, attractive, reliable, successful she could be. She started believing that love is something you earn, and only when you're perfect. But now, she's beginning to unlearn. And unlearning is a strange, painful, beautiful process. It means you'll outgrow things you once thought were part of you. You'll feel uncomfortable in rooms you used to feel proud to enter. You'll notice how your body tightens around certain people, how your spirit shrinks in certain conversations. You'll see clearly, maybe for the first time, where you've been abandoning yourself. And then, one day, you won't abandon yourself anymore. You'll catch yourself before you overextend. You'll hear your inner voice before she gets drowned out. You'll pause before saying yes, out of guilt. And maybe you'll even reach out, let someone in. Ask for help, not because you're falling apart, but because you finally understand that connection isn't weakness. Because what you truly needed wasn't to be stronger, it was to be seen. And that's the part no one talks about. How most strong women are silently starving for intimacy. Not the romantic kind, necessarily, though that's part of it, but the soul-deep kind. The kind where someone looks at you, past the roles and the armor, and says, "I see you. You don't have to earn anything here. You can just be." That kind of intimacy requires one terrifying thing: letting yourself be known. And for someone who's built a life on performance, on being the reliable one, the resilient one, that's the scariest thing in the world. Because when you're known, you're vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you can be hurt. But also, when you're vulnerable, you can be loved. Not for what you do, but for who you are. And isn't that what you've always wanted? To be loved without effort, to be held without explanation, to be seen without having to perform strength. It's not too late. It's never too late to come back to yourself, to meet the woman who exists beneath the armor, to hold her hand and say, You don't have to do it all anymore. I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. That's the beginning of everything. That's when the healing becomes real. Not perfect, not linear, not always graceful, but real. There's something sacred about watching yourself unravel, not because you want to fall apart, but because in that unraveling, you finally meet the parts of you that were never given a voice. The little girl who was told to sit down, be good, stop crying. The teenager who swallowed her feelings just to keep a boy from leaving. The woman who stayed silent in rooms where her soul was screaming. They all live inside you. They've been waiting not for a savior, but for you. And when you finally slow down enough, when you stop numbing, stop running, stop trying to outpace the ache, you can hear them. You can hear the moment your heart stopped trusting. You can feel the exact breath when you learned that being too much was dangerous. You remember the way you shut down parts of yourself just to feel safe, and it hits you all at once, like a wave. You weren't broken. You were adapting. Of course you had to be strong. Of course you had to be composed. Of course you had to smile while your world fell apart. Because that's what women like you do. You hold it together when no one else will. You carry the pain that others ignore. You wear the mask so well that even you start to believe it. But now you're done pretending. Now you're done calling it strength when it's actually suppression. Now you're ready to redefine what strength even means. Strength is not silence. Strength is not self-sacrifice. Strength is not being okay all the time. Real strength? It's crying when you need to, even if your voice shakes. It's resting when your body says, enough, even if there's more to do. It's saying no when you've been trained to say yes. It's choosing yourself over and over without apology. Because the world doesn't teach women how to choose themselves. It teaches them to be good, to be liked, to be wanted. But you were not born to be liked. You were born to be free. And that kind of freedom doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from remembering. Remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Before you were the caretaker, the achiever, the strong one. Before you learned to put everyone before yourself just to feel worthy. She's still there, the woman underneath all the roles. She's quieter, yes. A little scared, a little unsure. But she's also wise, and wild, and whole. She doesn't want to be rescued. She wants to be reunited with you. And it won't happen all at once. There will be days when you still go back into autopilot. Days when you smile out of habit. Days when, I'm fine, escapes your lips before you realize it's not true. But then there will be moments. Moments where you pause before betraying yourself. Moments where you breathe through the urge to please. Moments where you feel your feelings fully, without rushing to fix them. And those moments, they change everything. Because healing doesn't shout. It whispers. I deserve softness. I don't have to prove my worth. My pain is real. I am allowed to take up space. And when you begin to believe those whispers, the world around you shifts. You start attracting people who see your heart, not just your help. You start creating boundaries that don't require explanation. You start feeling safe in your own body, maybe for the first time. Not because the pain is gone, but because you've stopped running from it. You've turned toward it. And in that turning, you've discovered something you were never told. Your softness was never your weakness. It was your superpower all along. But it was hidden, wasn't it? Buried under years of pretending, years of armor, years of becoming what everyone needed you to be, just to feel like you belonged somewhere. And now, you're facing a question that most strong women never say out loud. What if no one ever really knew me? Not the me that shows up. Not the me that handles everything. Not the version of me that smiles through pain and jokes through tears. But the me that feels fragile at midnight. The me that craves connection, not performance. The me that just wants to be without having to earn space. That's a brutal question, because it reveals something deeper than loneliness. It reveals invisibility, and invisibility is a kind of grief no one talks about. You walk into rooms, and people see your achievements, your energy, your brilliance, but they don't see you. You get praised for your strength, but never asked about your scars. You get celebrated for your independence, but never asked how long you've been carrying it alone. And eventually, you start to believe that maybe this is just your role in life. The strong one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't ask for anything. But underneath that role is a woman aching to be seen, not for what she does, but for who she is when she stops performing. And yes, there will be fear. The fear that if you stop performing, people will leave. The fear that if you show your need, they'll pull away. The fear that if you say what you really feel, the world will collapse. But the world doesn't collapse. The false one does. The one built on pleasing, on self-abandonment, on pretending to be okay. And when that world falls, what's left? You, raw, tender, unfiltered, but real. And in that realness, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract what you truly need, not what your mask attracted. You meet people who aren't intimidated by your softness, who don't need you to be perfect to stay, who don't leave when you're quiet, or sad, or messy, because they're not with you for your strength, they're with you for your truth. And slowly, you start to trust again, not just others but yourself. You trust that you don't have to earn rest. You trust that love doesn't require exhaustion. You trust that your pain isn't shameful, it's part of your becoming. And through that trust, the woman you were always meant to be begins to rise. Not the woman who can carry it all, but the woman who finally chooses not to. The woman who knows her worth even when she's still. The woman who lets her tears fall without rushing to wipe them away. The woman who says no with grace, and yes with intention, and I need without guilt. She's not the strong one. She's the free one, and she's inside you waiting for you to let go of the version of you that survived, so you can become the version that thrives.